Welcome back, strangers. Spontaneous human combustion is the sudden ignition of a living or recently deceased body that bursts into flames without any apparent external source of the combustion. It has been attributed to fewer than 200 deaths in history and was made famous in Charles Dickens' book, The Bleak House, where an alcoholic character is a victim of spontaneous combustion. One of the revealing signs of spontaneous human combustion involves the total cremation of part or all of one's body. The fire doesn't spread too far from the deceased, and it usually only leaves smoke and soot damage as evidence. The cadaver can usually also be found near a place that produces heat or fire, like a fireplace, and sometimes autopsies may reveal that the bodies were burnt after an individual had died. Today we're going to be discussing the strangest spontaneous human combustion cases. In 1951, police discovered that 67-year-old Mary Reeser had somehow turned into ash, but her whole apartment remained intact, like there had been no fire at all. They dubbed the incident the Cinder Woman case. Mary Reeser lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, and on July 2nd, her landlady, Pansy Carpenter, was out delivering telegrams. When Pansy realized that nobody answered when she called, she wanted to make sure everything was alright inside, so she tried to turn the doorknob, but it was unusually hot and burned her, so she decided to call the police. The cops arrived at Mary's apartment, only to discover that the poor old lady had burned to death under mysterious circumstances. Police reports said that her body was destroyed by a fire that had a white-hot intensity. There wasn't much left of Mary to be examined. They only found one foot still in her slipper, which didn't have any indications of being charred, and a small piece of her spine. A piece of her skull was also found, but it appeared to have been shrunken by the intense heat. The apartment felt warm when the cops arrived, but there were no other signs that a fire had occurred. Plastic objects near the area where Mary had burned had gotten soft and lost their shape, but the entire room around the area was intact. The rug under Mary's body had a scorch mark, but a chair and an end table around the area remained standing. The whole case was strange. A body normally gets cremated at a constant temperature of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit over the course of around 3 to 4 hours. Yet it appeared as though Mary had rapidly burned in an intense heat for only a matter of minutes. Authorities were baffled by the case. The unusual circumstances surrounding Mary's death led some to suspect that she had died due to spontaneous human combustion. They claimed that she burst into flames because of a chemical reaction from within her, and not from external sources. Yet many are still skeptical of the source of the flames that consumed poor Mary. Chief Burgess was a detective on the case and told reporters that this fire is a curious thing. He and the rest of his team sent boxes of evidence and material taken from Mary's apartment to the FBI's lab in Washington, D.C. Everything was put under chemical analysis. They checked the rug, materials from the walls, and even parts of the chair where Mary had burned. Yet they found nothing conclusive. The public was fascinated by the strange case and wanted answers to what caused this 67-year-old woman living alone to burst into flames and die in only a matter of minutes. Finally, the cops released a statement to the press, stating that the case was an accidental death by fire of unknown origin. Chief Burgess reiterated that they were not closing the case, but rather releasing a statement so that Mary could be buried peacefully. The FBI concluded that her death wasn't because of spontaneous human combustion. However, the real cause is still a mystery. What was the true source of the flames that consumed Mary Reeser in 1951? Jean Safin was born with birth defects that included a mental handicap that provided her only with the skills and abilities of a child. She was born in London, and her unusual death is morbidly fascinating. The 61-year-old Jean was at her family's home on the night of September 15, 1982. She was sitting in the kitchen surrounded by her father Jack and her brother-in-law Don Carroll. Jack was looking away from his daughter when he suddenly noticed that she was up in flames. He and Don tried to put out the fire with water and then immediately called an ambulance. Jean was treated by paramedics inside the ambulance and was admitted to North Middlesex Hospital. She was then transferred to the burn unit at Mount Vernon Hospital, where she remained until she died of bronchopneumonia due to her burns 8 days after she mysteriously caught on fire. During the initial investigation of the strange inferno, her relatives suggested that Jean may have died from spontaneous human combustion. However, Dr. John Burton, the coroner, declared that no such thing existed and left the official cause of her death a mystery. Paranormal researchers and authors have insisted that Jean died of spontaneous human combustion. Don Carroll, who was there during the fire, stated that he saw his sister-in-law shooting flames out of her mouth and making roaring sounds as if she were a dragon. Don and Jack both testified that before Jean went up in flames, there was no other ignition source inside the kitchen except for the pilot light of their gas stove. Don also claimed that Jean's clothes remained intact and that there was no smoke damage in the kitchen despite the fire. While experts dismissed the claims of both men who were in the kitchen, nobody will truly know what happened to Jean. Do you believe Don and Jack told the truth of what happened, or did something more sinister take place that night? Robert Francis Bailey was a homeless person from London who allegedly succumbed to spontaneous human combustion on September 13, 1967. That morning at approximately 5:21 a.m., a female office worker called the London Fire Brigade. When she was waiting for her bus to work, she and a group of her co-workers noticed blue flames from an upper window. They thought it was only gas that had caught fire at a rundown council house at 49 Auckland Street. The house was owned by the council and the gas and electricity to the home had been shut off. Firefighters arrived at the scene approximately 5 minutes after they received the call. Fire Brigade Officer Jack Stacy was the first to go up the ladder and into the window. He stated, "When I got in through the window, I found the body of a tramp named Bailey, lying in the bottom of the stairs leading up to the second floor. He was lying partly on his left side. There was a 4-inch slit in his abdomen, from which there was a blue flame. The flame was beginning to burn the wooden stairs. We extinguished the flames by placing a hose into the abdominal cavity. Bailey was alive when he started burning. He must have been in terrible pain. His teeth were sunk into the mahogany post of the staircase. I had to pry his jaw apart to release the body, but the fire was still coming out from within the abdomen of his body." Almost 20 years after the incident, the BBC conducted an interview with Jack Stacy on their Newsnight show. He went into full detail and said, "The flame itself was coming from the abdomen. There was a slit about 4 inches in the abdomen and the flame was coming through there at a force, like a blow lamp. A bluish flame, which would indicate that there was some kind of spirit involved. There's no doubt whatsoever the fire began inside the body. That's the only place it could have begun, inside the body." The flames burnt through a 6-foot area on the floor, and also burnt Bailey's right hand. During the investigation, Bailey's official cause of death was listed as asphyxia due to inhalation of fire fumes. Bailey had died from inhaling the smoke from his own fire. When his body was searched, he had no ignition sources on him, and he was also a non-smoker. He was a chronic alcoholic who may have consumed too much forbidden liquid before it ignited in his gut and consumed him. What do you think caused the fire in his gut? Michael Faraday was 76 years old when he was found burnt to death inside his living room at his home in Clairview Park, Ireland, on December 22, 2010. His body was partially cremated by the fire that was accelerated by the wick effect, which is usually observed near an open fireplace. News outlets went crazy when the coroner listed the cause of death as spontaneous combustion. Forensic investigators concluded that Michael's death wasn't because of his fireplace, and they didn't find any trace of fire accelerants on the burnt area. There were no signs of possible foul play involved in his mysterious death. Michael was found lying on his back, with his head located near the fireplace in the living room. However, firefighters noticed that flames hadn't come from the fireplace. The coroner was Kieran McLaughlin, and he thoroughly researched the case before he came up with his decision. He admitted that in 25 years as working as a coroner, it was the first time he ever encountered a case such as Michael's. Kieran read a book on forensic pathology that said, "Cases such as this almost always occur near an open source of fire, like a fireplace or chimney." He told the BBC, "This fire was thoroughly investigated, and I'm left with the conclusion that it fits into the category of spontaneous human combustion, for which there is no adequate explanation." One of the most recent human combustion cases occurred on September 17, 2017, when 70-year-old John Nolan spontaneously burst into flames while walking in the street of Tottenham, North London. John was airlifted to Broomfield Hospital with third-degree burns on 65% of his body. Sadly, John passed away the next evening while in the hospital. At the time, investigators were unable to establish a reason for the incident, and John's death was treated as unexplained. Some people passing by said that they witnessed John's clothes mysteriously catch fire and ran over to help him out. It happened just yards from his home on a quiet Sunday afternoon walk. A post-mortem examination revealed that the cause of death was severe burns without any further explanation. An official inquest was opened at the North London Coroner's Court in March of 2018 to further examine and explain the mysterious circumstances surrounding John's death. The coroner determined that John's death was not a deliberate act by himself or anyone else, and that a flammable liquid was not involved in the fire. Finally, the North London's Coroner's Court determined it was most likely that John set his clothes on fire while lighting a cigarette. They ruled his cause of death was accidental ignition of clothing because John was found in possession of a pack of cigarettes and 2 lighters. Yet, why did it take so long to determine the proper cause of death of John Nolan? Spontaneous human combustion has been studied from as early as the 19th century. In 1833, Dr. Edmund Sharkey wrote about the phenomena and theorized that a lack in research on the event was the result of the presumed infrequency of the disease and its consequent deficiency of practical interest. But he added that cases on record are so numerous and that have come down to us from different countries and eras. Yet some experts and medical officials denied that spontaneous human combustion is even possible. In 2000, authors of an article from the Journal of Clinical Forensic Medicine concluded that spontaneous human combustion does not exist on its own. It has to have a partner event for it to occur. Today, there remains no concrete evidence of spontaneous human combustion. However, French scientists recently concluded that it is now accepted that under certain circumstances, a body can burn by a combination of its own fat, with little or no damage to close surroundings, and that such combustion is never spontaneous, but is instead ignited by an external source of flame. In some cases, the body is found in the hearth of a chimney. In such instances, oxygenation is good, and the draft of the conduit prevents the formation of smoke, and in particular circumstances causes combustion, not some unspecified extraordinary inflammability. Their paper referenced an experiment from 1965 in which a model had a similar structure to a human body's fat and skin layers. It revealed that a human can burn like a candle in some cases, and that an external flame source could get extinguished during the process of slow burning, which explains the absence of a heat source when the corpse is discovered. They even managed to cite a recent case that could be mistaken for spontaneous human combustion. Just as he was placed on the examination table and before he could get undressed, the patient had a tonic-clonic seizure, beating the air with his arms and striking his thighs. Within seconds, doctors were amazed to see a trail of smoke rising from the man's abdomen. Fortunately, the fire was quickly extinguished. It had quite simply started in a book of matches in one of the man's pockets that he had struck during the seizure, and thus the incident was prevented that might otherwise have turned into a further case of spontaneous human combustion. There are a few theories out there about what causes spontaneous human combustion. The subatomic pyrotron theory is based on quantum physics. It states that a minute-sized, but highly powerful particle such as a neutrino will zip through the small spaces between the atoms that make up the molecules in the human body. From time to time, a rogue piece ends up colliding with something, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction from within the body. It's like having a mini atomic bomb explode inside of you. There are some who believe that spontaneous human combustion is caused by the wick effect. This theory compares the human body enclosed with a candle and wick, because human fat turns into liquid at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37 degrees Celsius. Since fat is very flammable, it's highly likely to burn under extreme circumstances. In most cases of spontaneous human combustion, the victims are usually charred, almost cremated in areas where the most fats in the body are deposited, such as the stomach and thighs. There have been controlled experiments in laboratories that deem the wick effect theory plausible. Strangers, do you believe spontaneous human combustion is possible? Which case do you think was the strangest? Let us know your theories and thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new. Smash the bell button so you never miss out on our new videos, which we try to release each week. And as always, stay strange.